Hello, friends, and welcome to 10 Points Under, where 10 Points Under is the best way to play, something that the two players today need to learn about a little bit, bless their hearts. This is Big a Bullfrog coming at you today, and I am joined once again by Heroscaper extraordinaire, OrcElfArmyOne. Welcome!
Thanks for having me. Although I gotta say, I mean, Cody is basically playing 10 points light, so he's
That's true.
he's in the spirit of things.
Yeah, because he doesn't even have tricky units to use Otanashi with. Chris, on the
Exactly.
other hand, needs a little, get my little Draugur out so I can X out Isamu over there.
Yeah, right. Well, 5 points light still isn't bad. I mean, it's not quite there, but hey, he's new to the scene. He's only a couple years on the scene, so we'll give him a pass.
That's true. I guess we can do that. He's given us enough good games otherwise that he's worth it, I suppose.
Yeah, he is. He's a really good dude too. He's gone to the last couple Gen Cons and gotten to hang out and talk with him quite a bit. Actually, played quite a few games. Played against him at least a couple times, and I remember I'll never forget our first game where it actually ended in a draw where he had a 2 life Q9 and 1/10th regiment left, and I had a 2 life Nilfheim and 2 dwarves left. And it's like if that plays out, it's super close, right? So
Mm-hmm.
and instead ends in a draw.
Nice.
So
That's good. Yeah, that's as close as it gets. Holy cow.
yeah, I mean, I don't. He would have been up on points, I believe, and I might have the lives wrong. Basically, he would have been up slightly on points had it been partial card scoring, but Gen Con's full card scoring. But yeah, I mean, it's just the way it worked out with the 180 and the 75 versus the 185 and the 70, right?
Right. Nice. That's awesome.
Yeah,
That's pretty rare that you get that too.
yeah, super rare. I that's my only draw in the history of all my tournament games. So
Nice. I've never had a draw. I think I've only actually seen one draw with all the games that we've done here in Utah. Well, yeah, so today we're actually bringing you a game from the Online Con 4x400 tournament series that they did. So this is a test tournament that they did in preparation for the Online Con, which is coming up. This should actually be releasing shortly before Online Con opens up. So if you're watching this and you haven't heard of Online Con before, I'm guessing most of you have if you're watching this because I'm sure most of the viewers are in the know about it. But if you don't know about it, there will be a link in the description. Make sure you check it out and play it if you want to. Basically, with Gen Con being canceled due to situations in the world that's out of the control of mankind, the Online Heroscape team is putting on an online convention. There will be a good amount of different formats and tournaments happening over the weekend, July 31st to August the 2nd. So there'll be like a main event, just like Gen Con has. It'll be Reverse the Whip. There'll also be General Wars, a pod draft. There'll be a few things. So definitely check it out if you haven't heard about it, and even playing it if you want to. It'll be a good time. It'll be a fun scene. I'm definitely looking forward to it. But so this 4x400. Basically, what happens if you don't know what 4x400 is you come into the tournament. You've got 4 armies. Each one is 400 points. And each round you play a different army. You have it listed off, so it's like you have your army 1, 2, 3, 4. Your opponent has army 1, 2, 3, 4, and round number 1. I think it depends on where you are. They like either do a drawing or you just play army number 1 that you have listed. However it worked out, and that's your matchup. And each round you play a different army. Kind of fun. I've never actually done it personally, but I know it's a very popular Gen Con format. And it is one where you get to cheese out a lot of stuff, if we're being honest. But that's part of the fun, I think, is being able to just see what is strong constantly, and also seeing if you can mess with that in different ways.
yeah, definitely. I think 4x4 has a lot of benefits. The main drawback, of course, is it is mostly a cheese fest. You're gonna see a lot of the same top armies, but I mean, the thing with Heroscape is the number of top armies in Heroscape is actually pretty diverse. Like it's a pretty large number for any competitive board game or minis game or even card games. Like you look at most of those other games, you look at X-Wing, you look at Star Wars Destiny, you look at pretty much you name it, Game of Thrones LCG. It's like there's usually like three, two, three, maybe 4 things that are clearly the top of the meta. Whereas in Heroscape, we have at least 6 or 7 that are easily just like viable for that top slot. Like nobody really
Mm-hmm.
knows. So it's not as not. It's more diverse than I think a lot of people think it is. I think people are spoiled, quite frankly, with the Heroscape meta being as open as it is. And I think a couple of things it does is it makes it pretty easy for a new player to jump in. They can just bring in any 400-point armies they want, even if they're not going to be super competitive with them. But it's easy enough for them to get playing. There's not a lot of army building restrictions. And the other thing it does is, like, if I don't want to necessarily play this army for 5 rounds, I don't have to. I can just, like, I can play a little bit of this, play a little bit of that, and I think that's just, like, it's a fun thing to do. And it means that, if I'm playing a just like straight up cheese army for 5 rounds, I'm going to play heavies, but, like, I like also playing knights. I'll play dwarves for a round, but I don't necessarily want to play those as much as I want to play heavies. But this kind of forces me to, right? So it just, like, it lets you explore your bounds, lets you try out different things, and you can definitely push the limits of what you're seeing. So, I mean, on the right side, we're seeing Chris with the stereotypical knights build in this format. You go to any GenCon, you're going to see a lot of the 4x4 people running 4 knights, Gilbert, Isamu. That's just very, very standard army. And on the left, you have Cleon, and he has a bit of a different build. He's running Goblin Cutters, he's running Nilfheim, he's running Otonashi. Otonashi you see a lot in 4x4 just because you can't use the same figure twice, so you can't have Isamu in multiple builds. So you see Otonashi as a filler, but Nilfheim and Goblin Cutters is not a combo I think I've ever seen at 4x4, personally at least. The closest I've seen is 4 Goblin Cutters, Raylan, and Cayman. And that's a bit of a different build than the Nilfheim. So it's just, I mean, last year I brought 3 Phantom Knights and Nilfheim. You can bring, like, Stinger's Braxis. It opens it up where you can try out some things that, like, push the bounds of this while still being really strong, because Goblin Cutters and Nilfheim is still a very strong build.
Yeah, I am really excited to see how this build plays out, and I do, like, honestly, I would love to try out a 4x4. I think if I went to Gen Con, or, like, even this event, I wasn't able to play in the event. I was busy that morning doing a lot of different things. I was able to get a good amount of recordings, but I definitely see the value of being able to just, like, try out a lot of different things, and, like, even, these more off-meta armies, just, like, try them out, see how they play into different types of armies and different kinds of players. I think it's an awesome way to experiment stuff, because it's quick, it's easy. I mean, if you want to go full cheese, you totally can. And if you want to play a little off-meta and see how that works, that's also a very viable option. It's a really good environment for it. Also, really quick thing that I remembered while you were talking there. So, OrcElfArmyOne, I'm sure y'all know that he's got his Casters of Valhalla podcast. If you don't know, check it out. They actually did a episode where they talked a lot about 4x400 armies and just, like, the event itself. And so that will be linked in the description below, because that, if you're interested in 4x400 gameplay, armies, theoryscaping, that type of stuff, you can, like, that's definitely a thing to check out, and just get a lot of insight from people who play at Gen Con, who've done it a lot, and they theoryscape a lot of different types of armies, like the cheese armies, as well as armies that they realistically would play if they wanted to just, like, have fun with it.
Right, definitely. And I mean, so Cleon is a member of our podcast as well, the guy on the left. So I was actually talking with him before the event, and he was specifically brainstorming armies that were going to be viable, were going to be strong, but weren't going to be what everybody else was bringing. So I believe he brought, I think, an Aeroguts build. He brought this build. He brought a Braxis build, I believe. So just, like, not just your typical 4th Mass, 10th Regiment, heavies, knights, Q9 rats, etc. So that was just kind of his goal going in, and he ended up, I believe, he went 2 or 3-1. I believe he went 3-1 in this event. So the final round he played Cyprian and minions. So just a lot of more interesting armies and a little off meta, right? But I mean, the point is you can still do well with these builds.
Right, yeah. Yeah, so it's a really cool way to just like experiment and have a lot of fun with stuff. Definitely a cool format that I'd love to try out. But with that little bit of explanation out of the way, we'll go ahead and jump into the game and see how this rolls out. So OrcElfArmyOne and I were talking about this a little bit beforehand, just talking about the matchup a little bit, and, like, the more off-meta approach versus the knights. We were saying that the knights probably have more of an edge versus cutters, because cutters into bonding melee isn't the best. But honestly, I don't even remember how this game ended. I know I saw the end because I came in to stop the recording, but I don't even remember what happened. So I'm really looking forward to see how this works because I think there is a lot of potential for cutters, even if it's not a super favorable matchup on the whole. I think with some good play, cutters could, really surprise us, slash, even take a win here.
Yeah, I mean, so you really do have to acknowledge that, like, going into this, Cody's going to have to really make some plays, right? He's gotta. The matchup is tilted towards Chris's favor, and so when you look at a game, you have to realize that people aren't always just taking what's considered optimal moves because, like, Cody's starting this down as far as I'm concerned, and I'm sure as far as he's concerned, Cody's a great player, and so he's gotta really play this well, and he's gotta really try to, I mean, minimize losses to the knights. I honestly don't have a lot of experience with cutters into bonding melee to know like exactly what he should be doing here, right? So it's not like I'm definitely not an expert in this situation, and it'll be interesting to see how he can get this to play out, right? And looks like a 3 symbol roll from Chris on the dispatch. That's pretty nice, and yeah. So it's gonna be interesting. He's gotta try to limit attacks for sure. He's got to limit losses. He's got to use. I mean, the big thing obviously is the scurry, right? You got to use scurry to your advantage. I'm really curious to see how mob attack plays out against bonding melee because that's something that is really hard for me to theoryscape just because
Right.
it's so positional, right? Like both players have so much say in how mob attacks happen.
And especially when you've got, I mean, like knights, especially, I think, with Sir Gilbert's dispatch power, they can, like, it's not like it's going to be very easy at all to catch lone knights with the cutters. When he can just flood in, when he can reinforce positions with knights who aren't even going to be attacking that turn, I think that of all the bonding melee options to play into with cutters, now that I'm like looking at this matchup more and more, I think knights are probably the one that I would fear the most, probably.
I might say heavies, just because Grimnack. So Grimnack becomes a beast in this matchup because he can move next to two, chomp one. They can't scatter. They can't scurry away, and then he can attack with two
That's
dice, and
true.
all of a
Two
sudden,
attack becomes relevant.
exactly. So because I've played the flip side of that matchup, right? I've played the heavies into the cutters, and it's definitely that's very favorable to heavies. So I haven't played the knights cutters matchup, so I don't 100% know. But if I had to guess, I would say that the heavies matchup is worse, just because also, I mean, the heavies are also going to be at 4 or 5 defense thanks to Grimnack, thanks to Nirak. So that's a really tough matchup for them. I mean, when Grimnack's getting you 2 kills in a turn, something wonky's happening. It means you're playing against cutters or you're playing against Venox, and that's basically it.
Right.
So
Yeah, I do think so. With all that in mind, though, how do you think Nilfheim plays into this matchup? Because I think Nilfheim, I don't know, is Nilfheim? He's not great against knights, right? I really don't have much experience with that matchup, actually, despite those being very popular figures.
yeah, he is not great into knights. He's not bad into knights. He can definitely do work. I mean, so here's the deal. Nilfheim's a really skill-based figure. I think one of the highest, and it's really tough to play like really optimally with Nilfheim, and especially when you don't have green skills to bond. But I mean, you got a bunch of cutters. I think at this point, Cody is doing the right thing of just developing up the screen, right? Just
Hmm.
getting those cutters up. Doesn't look like he's really moved any of the ones that are already up twice yet. So like that's theoretically I'll be releasing a podcast episode about all about bonding melee and how to develop soon. So if this is something you're interested in, I would recommend checking it out once that happens. But basically, like one of my core principles of playing bonding melee, right? Like just one of the things that you should just generally do this is you don't want to move the same figure twice until you've moved all of them once, right? And that's
Hmm.
not that doesn't cover every situation because you want to be able to threaten. Like there are so many other variables, but at the same time, if you stick to that, if you just make sure to constantly move up the back most people, if you don't move the same person multiple times until you've moved everybody that many times, you're just going to develop up better, and you're going to just be in a better position over the course of a game. And I mean, you're seeing that right now from both of these players. They're both developing up very well. And I mean, this is pretty much a masterclass right now, as far as I'm concerned, in how to develop up figures, right? Like neither of them are just charging across the map, right?
Right. Yeah, I think that's definitely very good, especially because you can see in this matchup how that benefits the other player if you rush up. Goblins, if they rush up, they're just going to get killed very easily. You'll get a scurry, but you're not going to be able to maximize mob attack, which is never a good thing. And then also knights, if they run up, mob attack becomes relevant all of a sudden, and that you're just throwing away figures. One thing that I do kind of like, I think I heard this from your podcast, I believe. I'm guessing Ken or Matthias was talking about it, but just keeping Gilbert back as a constant, basically a localized Valda glyph, or even better than Valda, really, just to like keep him back away from the front lines. Not that there's really a front line yet, but like keeping him back to keep boosting figures forward.
Definitely. I mean, it goes back to what's the key aspect of this army, right? Like when I think about heavies Grimnack, I mean, obviously heavies are contributing to the offense tremendously, but at the same time, a lot of my offense comes out of that chomp, right? Like that guaranteed kill around is huge, right? If you have 12 or 16 figures, even if I can get even 4 chomps, I'm chomping a quarter of your army. Usually I'm chomping more than that, though. That's the key, right? Like usually I can chomp half an army, and that's usually game, right? And so like just thinking about the reverse, though, is like with Knights Gilbert, it's like, well, with Gilbert, I can get 1 attack of 3. So what's my core offense here? And I know he's got the stat buff just like Grimnack, but his stat buff isn't as good because it's not defense as well. And his offensive output, just like I would like chomp or 3 dice. Like chomp wins every day, other than in very specific matchups. But most matchups you can chomp some things at least. It's like against hounds you can't, right? Like that's basically it.
There's always a Nisa move back in the start zone that you can just try to chomp.
Oh yeah, chomping him is the greatest feeling in the world.
Oh yeah.
It's like I don't have to deal with your BS. So yeah, I mean, just like looking at what needs to do the offensive work, and Knights are it. So we got the dispatch whiffed. I mean, that's honestly, I don't think he needs to be that aggressive with Gilbert at this point.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, and right after we talked about keeping Gilbert in reserve, Chris just moves him up. It's not super aggressive, but at the same time he can be hit, or like this knight can be hit from height and even ground. Like anyway, yeah, just right after we talked about it.
Yeah, I think he was banking on a dispatch to get him an extra space or 2 in order to get up next to Gilbert. I don't like that call. Just because, so you're going to this matchup up, right?
Right.
Like, you want to be making sure that the variance can only turn out bad for you, right? Like basically, if the variance is even or relatively even, and the plays are even, you're coming out ahead just on average. So you want to make it so that the opponent has to make those plays. So like now Cody does throw a goblin there, obviously, to capitalize. And also just like I don't love how spread out the knights are across the map. Like obviously knights can be more spread out than heavies. That's one of their benefits. But at the same time, I don't know how much fighting is going to happen at the north side of the map at this point.
Right.
Obviously unique attack lift is okay, but it's really not very good for each side, right? Like knights shouldn't be getting many attacks with Gilbert, because they don't. First of all, you don't need extra attack with Gilbert anyways onto a Goblin Cutter, so that glyph is pretty much worthless to knights. Maybe not 100%, but relatively. And then Nilfheim isn't here to attack with 6 dice in this matchup specifically, right? Like he's here to hit 3 things a turn with 4. So I at this point, it doesn't look like you need all those knights up north, and especially you got a great clump down low, but you got that guy. I don't know, the one just south of the glacier is in a decent enough space. The northernmost glacier.
This guy.
Yeah, exactly. But like those other ones behind him aren't in great places, right?
Right. Yeah, they're just kind of straggling, and especially once you lose Jandar's dispatch from that, it just becomes so much harder to like funnel them through into the action. And so yeah, I can definitely agree with that. I think that's one of the things that I really like about this map is how it forces those those development decisions right from the outset with this glacier right here. You're going to have to either decide to do I have an army that can spread out? do I have an army that needs to focus on one area? And I definitely agree here, where with knights into cutters, I think it's just so much better to keep all your knights in one area instead of, spreading out too much. Because, if anything, the goblins probably are a little more okay with spreading out because scurry can get them back into position if they need to. Even then, you don't want to be losing figures in order to get figures into the place that you want them to be. But it's a bit more of an option, I think. It's just so much nicer when you've got so many knights in one spot, able to choke things up. Also because Nilfheim can pick off knights.
Well, and also, so like at least a couple of those knights up north, Gilbert definitely can't see because of dispatch. Like he won't be able to dispatch them. The rightmost two, for sure.
Definitely, probably that one, maybe.
Maybe it's a tough. Well, he moved him anyways.
Yeah, and he's a little higher, I guess. So
yeah, but so you're just cutting off options in that way. You definitely can't dispatch that one knight way back in the start zone. You're not giving yourself the best options possible. And for Cody, I don't like the goblin that's behind the glacier on the 3 level.
Right here?
Yeah, because I understand why it's there, but I guess there's no real rush at this point to be there. You can be there at any point. So like you have 3 goblins still in your start zone.
Yeah, that easily could have been one of these guys moving up.
Exactly. So because there was no way, you have scurry, there's no way the knights are breaking through. So and now you have another goblin up there screening for Nilfheim, right? I mean, and maybe that's why he did it, because he's not going to be taking another turn for goblins for a little while. But at the same time, Nilfheim's already going to be shooting up at knights, so like giving height, the knights attacking down on cutters just isn't that relevant. Like if your offensive plan here is Nilfheim mostly, then like you don't really care that much about the cutters.
Right.
This is gonna be a tough map for the cutters though. Like, look, I mean, Chris can choke this stuff up, where he can get on both sides of the map there, even just north where that one knight's already, he can just stick one more knight next to him on that 2-level snow.
Wait, sorry, where who is that?
The northern part of the map to the like north right.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So like he can basically make it so that he can never get mobbed.
Right, yeah. And that's like one of my worries about the efficiency of the goblins. If you're using them as the main force, I mean, like luckily Nilfheim is here to kind of help out with that. But yeah, there's just so much, like as he moves forward, there's just nice little choke points that he can continually move into in order to just deny that mob attack, which takes away a lot of the goblin cutter efficiency.
Yeah, I mean, it's coming into a tough matchup here. I mean, he is getting goblins out of the start zone now thanks to the scurry or the scatter or whatever, but he's just gonna have to figure out some way to get some offense going. I mean, Nilfheim is obviously your offense here, but it's just a slog. 4v4s, 4v5s is when they're on height.
Right.
you're getting 3 attacks per turn. You're hoping that you can ice shard enough of these knights before they can break through the cutters, right? And it would be one thing if these were rats. But
yeah, rats would be so much better just because, I mean, they actually have defense.
Yeah. Turns out defense dice help.
Yeah.
Weird. Okay, so if I mean with Cody though, like he does want the auto to marker onto the cutters, right? Like he does want to kind of be bouncing back and forth a little bit. So I don't love where that knight is. That just moved there to attack because he's giving up height. I mean, I understand you're a little worried about Nilfheim here, but at the same time you're in pretty good shape, right? Like Nilfheim can get kills, but he's not gonna wipe you in a turn. You got 16 knights for a reason,
Yeah. I mean, like that's just so many knights with 4 defense, and yeah, I don't love.
He can get mobbed.
Yeah, he can be mobbed. He can be attacked from height. Like this one down here as well can get mobbed. He's just setting himself up for a counter attack that I think can only hurt him. Wait. Oh, okay, that's a good catch. I had to stop on the glyph there. So the knight is here now.
Okay. Okay, so it looks like Chris swung a knight down. I mean, he's just trying to break through these cutters. I will say these cutters are spread out a little more than they need to be, like north to south on the map. You really want to be able to, like with Nilfheim, you really want to say, I want to end up here, which I know you don't have full control over where here is, but if you don't know where here is yet, my advice is that you stick more central to the map with your early developments of those cutters,
Hmm.
and then you can crash north or crash south from there, right?
Right.
So like it looked, I don't know. I just think he committed a little harder north than he had to, because
Yeah.
now those two cutters aren't in great spots.
Yeah. I do think, like, I mean, especially if he's looking to screen with cutters, this spot is fine for Nilfheim. And yeah, like you said, if you wanted to end up here, having his cutters here to be able, because you've got a 1 hex and a 1 hex to block off of, if you need to fall back to that point. Granted, you're being attacked from height, but I mean, those attacks are probably going through anyway with the knights. But
Well, and if Nilfheim's rear space was back one, like just down one, now that cutter could be blocking where exactly now
oh
that
yeah,
cutter could be blocking there that one space, and then wouldn't be giving up height.
yeah, that's true. So yeah, I think yeah, if he's gonna play that come at me game, I mean, I think you just go full come at me.
So he order marker 3 is on Nilfheim. Was that do you know if that was Chris's order marker 2 or 3?
That is a good question. I'm not certain.
I wasn't paying attention. All right, I guess we'll figure it out. But
Yeah.
because that does depend on what it does have some bearing on what happens here. So Nilfheim looks like he's just ice sharding from there. Okay,
Hmm.
I don't dislike the call. It'll be interesting to see if he bothers with the shard onto 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I guess he has to take one. No, he does have to take one on Gilbert because I wouldn't bother with one on Gilbert personally.
Right. Yeah. Usually I
I would,
wouldn't at all, but
yeah. Okay, and he's not. Yeah, that's a good move.
Chris rolling with one defense die right there.
The one up on the
Oh, the
shadow
one up
there.
there. Oh, okay. There we go.
Yeah, he didn't count the height as well. So
Okay, okay. Okay, so a couple nice blocks. So looking at this scurry movement from how
mhm.
the cutters kind of developed back, I don't. So unless you're going to be using the cutters next turn to attack, I don't love putting a cutter up like in this area. Because
That's my guess.
yeah, if you're trying to like block off this knight, I mean just put it right there, and then that way you don't have cutters all over the place because you want a more. I think like especially with the low defense screen, if you're screening with cutters, like I think you just want to keep them more compact in that case instead of spread out. Rats, they've got the defense where you might be able to put one up here with 5 defense, and then the knight either has to like move back, and then it's like in an awkward spot, or you can force more stuff with the or with the higher defense. But I don't love the cutters up here.
Well, I don't dislike it, but I think it should have been order marker 1 on cutters.
Right. Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Like you're setting, so it's you have the potential for an initiative switch here, and you have some cutters in decent enough shape, so you can get 3 attacks and you can develop up another. You can either move south with one of the northmost ones, or you can bring up one of the backmost ones. I
Mm-hmm.
don't dislike that play. But actually, probably you don't even bother attacking with the one on Shadow. So you would move 2 up, you would get 1 attack down and 1 attack down onto Shadow.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't dislike that play. I just think you need to put order marker 1 onto cutters to really make it like the like I agree with you. It doesn't make sense if you're putting order marker 1 onto Nilfheim, though, right?
Yeah.
I would like I think I mean it's the same way with rats where you oftentimes do want to be splashing order markers onto these rats over the course of the game, not for attack so much with rats, just to be really really obnoxious with what you're shutting down,
Mm-hmm.
which is obviously matchup dependent, obviously dependent on a lot of factors. But like if you like somebody like a doc or whoever are really know when to mix in those rat order markers occasionally, and I think that's really what you got to do with these cutters here, you know.
Right. Yeah. I definitely agree with that. I think it's like even more important with cutters, because just because they do have tools that you can use outside of. I mean, cutters are a poor screen. They're a really bad screen. They've got scurry, and that's about it. So they can block a space for a while, but it's not going to be super long because they're just going to die every time they get attacked. And so I mean, I think you kind of need to be utilizing their offensive strength as compared to rats in order to like really be getting the most out of them. Even if your main cannon is Nilfheim, yeah, just like splashing order markers onto them is just so nice. I think in games that I've played with cutters.
Yeah, oh, definitely. Yeah, I mean, another option with Nilfheim here would be to build a box around the 2 level 2 snow spaces, either the ones right there, right by your cursor,
Hmm.
or the ones up right above that, and just trying to create like a box around it, right? And basically say this is my two spaces that Nilfheim's going to live on, and then I'm just going to make it so that you can't get knights adjacent to me.
Okay.
Okay, so he's going over
He's
there,
gonna go over
which
here.
so he can a dispatch means that Chris can engage an elf.
Right.
I,
Yeah, that's
like a one dispatch is enough with that
yeah.
knight on the level 3 snow
Yeah,
right
that
there.
guy.
Yeah.
Or even this guy. Yeah, like, because especially where he's got now he needs these attacks to go through. I don't know, because like I don't hate the placement overall really. I think if he'd known he was going to go here, he could have prepared for that move a bit more with Scurry in order to have goblins in the right spot.
Mhm. And that goes back to that potential Order Marker 1 play, right?
Mm-hmm.
Of like being able to know, like, I know I'm going to be using Nilfheim Order Markers 2 and 3, so I can build the screen I want. But I mean, it's a lot of forethought with Nilfheim. Like, you really want to know where am I going to want to be, and then you got to really execute that. And I mean, I think he's just at this point a little indecisive. I know I talked with him actually after the game. He texted us, and basically he wasn't super thrilled with how he played. So, I mean, he just you can tell he's just not super decisive with where he wants to be, right? He's just kind of
Mm-hmm.
like a little bit like, oh, maybe I want to be over here, maybe I want to be over there, and that works in certain matchups. But like even just getting engaged to one knight with Nilfheim, like obviously taking two disengages still a lot of times can be the correct call, depending on different factors, right? But I mean, obviously that hurts more than taking just one disengage, right? So
Right.
I mean, he's gonna get a 3-die attack, and then I mean, really the whole point of this is you want to be just picking away with those cutters, picking away with Nilfheim, trying to get down to an end game. Like if you have an end game of Nilfheim and a couple cutters against like Gilbert and like a couple knights, you're in good shape, right? Because like 1v1, like you're good with Nilfheim into Gilbert. That's a really good matchup for you.
Mm-hmm.
So like just think about like win conditions. Like what's my win condition here? Is like if I kill all these knights, I win this game. And you just have to be thinking ahead of like what's gonna be my best way to kill the most knights each turn this round. And a lot of times it's gonna be Nilfheim just because of how the other person can position, but you're definitely gonna have some turns where it's like especially order marker ones, where it's like my order marker one, I've set myself up for this. Now I can take this order marker one on cutters, and
Mm-hmm.
especially when you have the chance for that initiative switch there, the attack down on the glyph guy. Not that you care about the glyph, but like it's still just a 3v4. That's one of the best attacks you're gonna get this game.
Right.
That's not Nilfheim's attacks, right? That's gonna be one of your best cutter attacks this game. And unless you're never going to attack with cutters. I mean, if you're never going to attack with cutters ever, I guess it doesn't matter. But I just don't think Nilfheim can do enough work. And remember, this is an hour timed round. This
Mm-hmm.
isn't go until it finishes. So like, you have to also consider points, right? Am I going to be up on points? And while Nilfheim is good to hoard points, Gilbert, a squad, and a Samu is the same. I mean, obviously, you're still probably going to have Onashi left, so it's going to be like, but that right there is 195 to 185. If they wipe out all the cutters and even 5 knights are left, now you've lost. So like you gotta take these knights off the board. I think you need to be splashing some more markers on cutters here.
Yeah. Yeah. I definitely agree with that.
And
And
and and I think honestly, from what I've seen, online games are slower too. Like you're gonna get less time in an hour online round than you will in a real life online round, right?
right. Yeah. That. I mean, unfortunately, that's just always the truth of playing online. And like they do have a voice chat specifically set up for these events, so that helps. But even then, I think you're still looking at like, even like 10-20% longer for an hour long for what's usually an hour long game. That turns into a decent amount.
Right. It's gonna cause games that wouldn't normally go to time because like a lot of games finish up with 5 or 10 minutes left in real life. It's
Mm-hmm.
kind of like the hour round is perfect for most games, and then you take the online interface, you add that in. Now you have to account for the fact that like instead of being a 50 or 55 minute game, you're looking at like on average you're looking at more like hour and a hour 5, hour 10, right? So it's like if let's say the average is even if the average is an hour, that means there's a decent amount that are going longer than that. And
Mm-hmm.
that's just not a you just basically don't go to time. That's best advice. But like it's tough not to. You know, it's going to be tougher not to in these online games. Yeah. So Nilfheim right there had to take a dispatch. He took a hit from the normal attack, so he's up to 2 hits already. And honestly, if I'm Chris, man, I'm just hopefully dispatching to disengage and then be able to attack with that knight. If not, if you whiff the dispatch, I would still just take that disengage.
Right.
Like the payoff is so high here. Like obviously it's all about the knights in this matchup. Like how many knights can he live with, etc. But at the same time, like the payoff of tying up Nilfheim yet again, maybe putting a hit on him, threatening that disengage again. Like you can only go so far.
Mm-hmm. Oh, actually, I think attacking that cutter might have been a mistake with Gilbert. That means before dispatch, Cleon can move a cutter right here and just block that. Well, okay, maybe both of these and just block that.
Oh, that was absolutely a mistake.
That said, doesn't look like Cleon's capitalizing on it.
Well, he's making it so that as long as he sticks one in that front mode.
Yeah, I would move this guy just right there.
Yes, absolutely.
Let's
see if he does. Yeah, he does. He dispatch forward.
Yeah. Okay, and he got the kill. I mean, I can see the baiting the disengagement, but I think Nilfheim is such a, especially the way you're playing this game, Nilfheim is such a central figure that I'd rather take away that risk entirely.
Yeah, and I mean every play upside downside, right? Like what's my upside here? What's my downside? And the upside of killing one knight with a disengage isn't worth the downside of potentially letting Nilfheim get engaged here, get attacked. Like this could just be it. If that knight dispatches, rolls 3 skulls, Nilfheim blanks, like that's game.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Like, more than likely.
Yeah. I do want to point out really quick just how cool of a tool that is, because that's something that I wasn't aware of until Matthias posted about it. I mean, I think feels like it was a few months ago. It's probably like, I don't know, up to a year ago. But anyway, just being able to use Jandar's dispatch to disengage with a knight, and then if that knight dies like it did, you don't lose an attack. I mean, you're not going to get max attacks anyway because you're fighting cutters, but you don't lose, your one of your 4 attacks the next turn because that wasn't part of that knight's turn. So I think that's a really cool tool. I don't know if I just am like the only one who didn't know about that trick, but in case there's some other players like me who weren't aware of that tool that they can use when playing knights, that's a really cool thing to do.
100%. I mean, honestly, I had never thought about it either. And I've been playing how long? So, I mean, I haven't played knights a lot. I've played single digits number of games with knights compared to, I don't know how many games with heavies. Absurdly, probably with heavies, I've probably played in tournaments. It's easily like 30, 40 games, and then overall, it's probably, I don't think it's quite pushing 100, but it's significantly high, right? And with knights, it's like I've played single digits, and most of those were way back in the day when I didn't really know anything. So it's like it's one of those things that you don't really think about, and then like once you're told about it, you're like, wait, that makes a lot of freaking sense, So yeah, it looks like that's a really aggressive Gilbert move.
Made even worse by the fact that 2 defense blocked his attack.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, though, Chris kind of has him on the ropes at this point.
Right. So 2.5 squads? No, 2 and... There's another one back here. So 2 3/4 squads of knights against 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 cutters. 4 life Nilfheim.
And 4 life Nilfheim, yeah.
And Otonashi. But yeah, I do like the position that Cleon has been able to force with Nilfheim. Honestly, I think this, like, put another cutter here, and you've got that nice little wall, cutters here. I mean, I probably would have just gone for this early on because I actually really like this position with Nilfheim being able to sit on height 2 right here.
Yeah, that would have been a really strong position.
And so it's nice that he's been able to like maneuver himself into this position now with just like, he's been able to be a bit more mobile with his army, but I just think, kind of like you said, showing a little bit more commitment from the outset and just like, just looking for those win conditions, I think would have just been a big help. Because then when you like put order markers on cutters, if Chris is playing this he probably doesn't play this aggressively if you start like this, but then you've got attacks down that you can utilize.
Well, and if he doesn't engage like that, he's getting 2 attacks per turn maybe, and you're getting 3 attacks per turn with Nilfheim.
Mm-hmm.
I think you're okay with that, you know?
Right.
If you're Cody, you're good with that trade. And I do think that's probably the one drawback of this map I can think of is it's definitely easier. Like on this map, the classic pod position is on that part,
Right.
just because it is flatter there compared to the other side, which isn't to say you can't get good positions on the other side because I've definitely seen it happen. But if you're looking to just pod, like that side's stronger. But like I think the payoff on the other side is you're going to be able to utilize height a little better, assuming they're not willing to jump into water, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I think with Nilfheim, yeah, this was probably. I take back what I said earlier. Yeah, this is the better place to have Nilfheim earlier. And if you do this, man, I think it's a pretty different game, honestly, because he's definitely down at this point.
Right.
So he's got what a squad left and Nilfheim and Gilbert and a gazillion knights. Well, not really a couple squads, 2.25, but it's just not looking great, you know.
I mean, really just looking worse and worse as he gets even more and more cornered. Again, just like, kind of using that mobility that he has with the cutters to be able to like move them as they die. But, now if this knight doesn't die here, second, okay, so it didn't die. But, like that knight could have engaged. Chris, depending on his positioning with Gilbert, could potentially try some dispatch disengagements to get a knight up to here and attack. Actually, I don't know if you go that aggressive. Maybe just like go a little bit slower. I don't know. I guess this is getting a little bit more tricky with.
I don't think you bother personally. I would probably. I mean, that's probably fine enough.
Right. just like chip away the goblins. I was thinking of pushing
Yeah.
to Nilfheim, but yeah, at this point, I think
If you kill the
I
goblins
take it back.
with Nilfheim having that many knights left to kill, and just Chris would have to like the ball is going to be in Chris's court, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
this game is no longer really in Cody's hands. He can make all the best plays at this point, but it's just not going to be enough unless Chris also makes mistakes, right? Like that's kind of what it boils down to. So at this point, like assuming Chris doesn't make any real big mistakes, he probably is just going to be able to chip away at these goblins. Once those goblins are dead, that should pretty much be it. So barring a huge mistake on his part, I mean he's been playing it well. He's had a couple
Mm-hmm.
things where he's made a couple small things or whatever. That the one that I did think was big was just that one where he tacked with Gilbert where he shouldn't have.
Yeah.
Where then the scatter could have created that screen, right?
Mm-hmm.
So outside of that, though, it was like it's been mostly more minor stuff. So I mean, he's been playing it well. He's a good player. So I don't have a lot of. If I'm Cody right now, I don't have a lot of confidence in my opponent making a lot of mistakes and letting me back in this. You know.
Right. Yeah. I've played a few games against Chris, and relying on him making mistakes isn't really a sound strategy.
Yep.
And I mean, like I think same for Cleon going into this. I mean, I don't think this is an army he was super comfortable with, but I mean, like even then, I think he's shown good enough play overall that I mean, you're not really relying on him making mistakes unless trying to screen with goblins. Just not sure where he wants to end up.
Right. Well, and so he played well enough to beat plenty of people,
Mm-hmm.
but you have to do better against the better players, right? Like that's just the nature of any game is you're allowed more looseness of play, you're allowed more indecisiveness, you're allowed to be a little less confident in your calls and a little more I don't know the best word to describe a bit. You don't need to be quite as on top of your game against against people who aren't as strong, but like if you're playing against a good player, like you gotta make it happen. I mean, so that's right there. He's not giving up. He's going to the best spot for Nilfheim at this point, probably, which is yeah, almost definitely right there.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, the Chris rolled something. Shouldn't that have been 2 dice?
Yeah, it was 2 total dice.
Oh, 2 total dice. Yep. Sorry, I see the one skull and the one following it. So I thought
right.
the one, but it's one symbol, right?
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
same. I've been having to remind myself a few times about that because I'm used to looking at 1 and 1.
Yeah. So now we're gonna get some Bashards. 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, so he's gonna be able to I don't know if he'll be able to see that the middle knight, but he'll be able to get 5 knights or 3 knights rather for
Yeah,
sure. So
yeah, he's got a good target selection, and that one went through.
but again, it's going to come down to points too. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, if Nilfheim doesn't die, he's got to make sure he's at least killed. And I believe this is partial card scoring, right, for online.
I usually it's partial card, I believe. I don't know if they changed it for the online con since they were trying to mirror GenCon a bit more. I'm not certain on that actually.
Yeah, I believe it's partial, but I could be wrong on this because that does change a lot, right? Whether or not this is
Right.
partial or full. I guess let's operate on the assumption that is partial. I'll look it up, but assuming it's partial, Nilfheim's worth half of what he would otherwise be,
Mm-hmm.
which means that really Nilfheim is worth the same as Gilbert in this instance. So if you look at the rest of the figures, it's pretty clearly tilted towards Chris. So that's one of the things where Chris wants to take those last 2 goblins off the board if for nothing other than points. I mean, if I'm Chris, I'm probably killing Onashi too, and just saying like you're not gonna be able to kill enough of my stuff to win this on time, right?
Yep. There he goes, right there.
Yeah, exactly. And so like that's one of the things with online versus real life is like in real life that wouldn't work because you wouldn't be this far. Like right now we'd be at like the 45-minute mark.
Right.
So we're not even close. Like this game is more than likely finishing out, and instead it's not going to, which it obviously just changes how people have to play, and that's not necessarily a bad thing or like a terrible thing because every player is going into it knowing that at least it's not like it's surprise like so yeah, let me see if I can find points. It doesn't say anything about partial or full, so I'm gonna guess it's partial.
Yeah, if it doesn't say anything, I'd imagine that they default to their usual.
Yeah. And if it's full, I don't even know that you bother attacking Onashi in that instance, right? Like I think you just need to kill Nilfheim.
Yeah, it looks like Cleon's going for that end of game just points gained by trying to take out Gilbert.
Right, which is basically his only play at this point.
Nice hit, really. That was a good hit.
Oh yeah, definitely.
But that was order marker 3, and if this is the last round, which it probably is if he's going for that, then yeah, just not enough.
Oh yeah, it must be the last round based on how long they're taking with horde markers at this point. That's the one thing with when they're in their voice chats, they don't have to like type out like GG or whatever or anything because they're just talking, which is great, of course. But I guess we're assuming this is it.
Yeah, I think that's the game.
Yeah. So thoughts after the game? I mean, honestly, here's the deal. Like, okay, yeah, Chris has left the chat session. So if this plays out, I don't think Cody wins, right? Like I don't think Nilfheim cleans up enough. It's possible, but I don't think it would. More than likely, I doubt it would happen. I think it was just the indecisiveness at the beginning, the spread too far out, and just not having. I definitely up where he is. If he had just like built up that position early and had he flexed order markers a little bit better between cutters, between Nilfheim, like I think this is probably a pretty different game, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's still like you're still going to this though. Like it's a tough army to pilot in this matchup, right? Like it's not just maybe disheartening is not the right word, but like you get into a certain mind state when you're coming in down, right? Like when you're coming in, you're like, man, this is a tough matchup for me. This is not the matchup I wanted to see. Like if this is against like 10th Regiment or 4th Mass, he's a lot happier.
Mm-hmm.
And instead, it's like, man, the only matchup that would have been worse again, I think, would probably have been heavies, just because, especially like good luck screening against Chomp and disengage. So
yeah.
So I mean, and perhaps dwarves would have been tough too. Although I think cutters can at least do a little more work against the dwarves, right? So probably I'd rather face dwarves than knights. Maybe not. I don't know, but it definitely feels at least. In my gut, I feel that I'd rather face dwarves because my cutters can do offense at least 2v3s is a lot better than 2v4s.
Yeah, definitely.
So, yeah. I mean, it's a tough matchup. And
I think that's why it's like even more important from the outset. It's kind of like we said to like have a little bit more of a like concrete plan of what you want to look for. Because if like, if you know that the only way that you win this matchup is by screening with cutters and then busting with Nilfheim, you're probably looking at this position as your odd position, which didn't happen as well for Cleon early on. Yeah, I mean, I think I just agreed. Developing like it was a, I don't know, quote unquote standard, like a more casual game, I think. Because I think if you're not, playing a bit more casually, you see more of that kind of like widespread out development where you just have figures across the board. And that's not like the worst thing with cutters when you're playing against like another lower ranked army. But against knights, that's just such a hard thing to capitalize on when you've got knights gumming up all of the systems.
Right. And here's my maybe hot, maybe not, I don't know, take is that I feel like auras force people to play better, and when people don't have auras, like specific things that say you have to be within X number of spaces, they tend to not play as well. Basically, like if let's say this is Raylan Greenscale's Nilfheim, right?
Right.
Just think about how different Cody would approach this game with that army.
I think that's a great point. I mean, like I'd imagine you're probably going to go into this, but yeah, I mean, like that just forces you to plan from the outset. Where am I going to set up?
Exactly, and I mean, obviously that's like a stronger is bonding, right? But it's also just like it's a bit of a stronger build. But at the same time, like if you take those concepts you've learned from playing that and apply it to other Nilfheim plus screen builds, you're going to just naturally find more success with Nilfheim. I think the same can be said, honestly. I don't know that Chris need to be quite as widespread as we said early. And it's like if you're playing heavies Nirak with Grimnak, it's like it forces you to learn how to like discipline yourself to be a little more tight packed. Like obviously one of the strengths of Knights is you don't have to be tight packed, but honestly, if you position Nirak correctly, most of the time you don't go outside of his aura anyways. Not even because you like quote unquote can't, but just usually like 8 spaces off each way off this double space figure is usually a big enough area.
Yeah, right.
So if you just like approach knights in a similar way, not the same way, obviously, as we've said, they're different, especially in how you want to be aggressive with them and such. Like if you approach it in a kind of a similar way where you don't need to be as spread out, you're just going to be in a better position a lot more of the time because you're just going to always have those resupplies. And obviously it didn't really matter that much in this matchup, but I mean, that's one of the things I look for is like not even like was this adequate in this matchup? Because obviously in this matchup it was adequate, but like just in general, because like if you practice good habits, those good habits will come out later on when it does matter. That's kind of my thing. Is like if I'm consistently making the most optimum plays possible, which is impossible, but like if I try to make the most optimum plays possible and I look back and I say, well, that wasn't completely optimized, even if it didn't matter this one time, there's gonna be a game later down the road if you keep playing this game where that did matter, and now you're kicking yourself because you're not like used to those patterns, right? And that's why like you get good with certain armies as you learn those patterns, right? You learn the ways that this army wants to play, and you figure it out over time, and being able to transfer that knowledge over across these armies and then learn the differences from there. For example, like with me, with the Knights, like one thing I didn't really consider was like the dispatch disengage, but that's not going to drastically change how I play the Knights, right? That's one of those things. It's like, oh, that's a tool in my toolbox, but it's not the box itself, right? Like the box itself is still just like the generic, like developing up and how you're going to approach this game. And you learn the stuff over time. But so long story short, I guess, is just think about being a little more compact with pretty much most armies anyways, and if you do that, it just is going to force you to have a little more forethought, But again, like both players, Chris played well. I know Cody wasn't super happy after his game, so he acknowledges that he didn't come into this with the best plan, of how to lay this down. But also think about like it's tough to bounce order markers back and forth. It's weird. It takes a lot of games. Like I've gotten knocked out by Doc in the last 2 main events because I screwed up some order markers. It's. Like that's the way it is, like, oh well, that shouldn't have been there. Oh well, that's game, and it's tough, but like that's the way it is. And repetition, and just try to figure out like what happened, what went wrong, and then apply it to the future. Luckily this is, I mean, first of all, none of this really matters that much. It's all just a game, but all like Also, this is just like a 4x4 event. This isn't like a main event at Gen Con, like your final table main event. Like, obviously, stakes are higher there,
Mm-hmm.
or even main event of the online con in that for that matter. So, luckily, this is just kind of like a warm up thing. But at the same time, it's good to recognize that sort of stuff. So,
Yeah, no, I definitely agree, and I think hopefully this became like a good learning experience for Cleon after the fact, where like he was able to like go back, analyze his gameplay, and just be like, okay, where could I have improved? Where, like, what can I use going forward in order to have more of a plan of what I'm doing, like especially when I'm doing like a bit more of a mixed army like this, because I really do like the Nilfheim Cutter combination. I do think this is probably one of his tougher matchups, but I do think it's a cool combination. I actually really want to try it. And I know, like, just watching it, there's a lot that I can like learn from bouncing order markers, looking for those setups, and just like how you play that matchup when you're going in already not favored to win the game. How can you look for those little advantages to tip the scales enough for you?
yeah, I mean, it's tough. It's tough, especially like in a bad matchup like this. One of the things you need your opponent to make some misplays. You need them to get impatient. You just need certain things to go your way, and that's just not going to happen every time with a bad matchup. Like, that's just kind of the nature of the situation.
Mm-hmm.
And there's so many levels to like why you win a game, so many levels to why you lose a game of Heroscape. I mean, that's why I've never been a fan of dice, or specifically talking about dice after a match. Is like,
Right.
it just doesn't matter that much, because obviously it does matter sometimes, but like you have so many other factors that you can control, and like sometimes it's as simple as like this was a bad matchup, or maybe I brought the wrong army for this format. So like, if I know he wasn't trying to, like, his goal here was to do well while also exploring some like not quite cheese builds. So for Cody, like, that's a win just based on like how he was able to still be competitive in this game even though he
Mm-hmm.
lost. He was able to, over the tournament, again, I believe he went 3-1, so like was still able to be competitive in the event. And like, obviously he knows, like, if I'm trying to win this, I'm not bringing Nilf Cutters, because it's, while it
Right.
is good, while it is interesting, it's not the very best, most optimized build possible, right? Where Knights Gilbert pretty much is, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like, there are just so many factors that go into it. The map, again, I think this map was rough for Cutters. If he is trying to use Cutters as the main offense and not just splashing water markers onto them throughout, just because it's tough to mob on this map. It's choky.
Yeah.
I do really like the map. I do think the pathing is really good. I think it's a little choky at times, and you see that with screen armies, especially with like Cutters, with rats, anything like that. So like, if this is a different board, perhaps this goes differently as well. But also, like, you have to make do with the board you're given, and on this board, the board you're given, the best option would have been that pod on the top left. And yeah, like, you just gotta be able to go there, and execute that plan. So it's tough, though. Heroescape is tough.
It is. It really is. I mean, like, and I think that's such a good point, that there's so much. I mean, like, the board changes so much of how a game goes down, and like, your matchup changes so much, and I think that's one of the hardest, but also most rewarding parts, is being able to figure out how you're going to adapt your strategy to a different board, to a different matchup, how you're going to play into things differently, and just how you're going to look for those different like avenues to win with whatever army that you've got, and with what's under your control, because there's so much going into it. And I will say, like, I think another half of the battle is, so that you've got like how you prepare for it, like your plan going into it. I think one thing where Cleon really showed his strength as a player was with his reaction, because like, unfortunately, I think it kicked in a little bit too late, but just like his ability to react and adapt as the battle went, and like as he moved Nilfheim with Cutters up into more and more protected and just like stronger locations, I think that was a really good thing that he just showed throughout the game. I think if he has that end game, I don't know, mindset or skill, as well as like a stronger setup, I think things look a lot closer in this game.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's partly tactics versus strategy, right?
Mm-hmm.
His strategy going in wasn't set, it wasn't great, and then his tactics, the way he was reacting to stuff, and his in-game decisions were, for the most part, if barring the lack of a cohesive, definitive strategy, were good. His individual placements, a lot of times, I mean, he had some that we didn't love, of course, and some of the order markers, but how he reacted was definitely good. So like, if he comes in with just a stronger strategy, that right there could potentially be enough, and
Hmm.
strategy is the hardest part of this game. Like if you ask me, like the all the forethought you have to do, especially the strategy of each round, like you have the strategy of the game, but then you have the strategy of the round,
Yeah.
and then you have the tactics more of like how you actually maneuver and actually execute the strategy. But like you need first of all an overarching game plan, and then you also need, I go into most rounds with an overarching game plan of how I want this round to turn out. Like I want to get this done, I want to be here, I want to take a couple shots here, and I'm not thinking like, oh, I want to kill X figures, right? Like, oh, I'm going to kill 7 figures this round. Like, no, I'm not. Obviously, I'm not going into it that, because I'm never really expecting anything to kill. Like occasionally you do in certain situations, but for the most part, you're going in saying, I want to be here, I want to do this thing, and I want to do it well. And the more you
Hmm.
can do that, the more success you have. And I look at my losses, and it's usually because I don't go in with a good strategy, or my strategy of a round is poor. Like I put order marker 1 here, and order markers 2 and 3 are on Concan, and Doc kills Concan in top 8, and I lose because I lose 2 order markers. And if I have those 2 order markers back, he won with just a Sam Brown left, and it's like, if I have those 2 order markers left, that might be the difference right there.
Yeah.
So like it's not even just like conjecture. Like this is, you see this in so many games of this, or you see end games where people mismanage their order markers. Obviously it matters there, but it matters honestly just as much up front. It matters even more up front. I see so many people, including myself, I've lost turn 1 for sure. Plenty of people do. And I think what's interesting about Heroscape, and what makes it tough to like really know what's happening, is if you're not experienced, it can be really tough to understand that I just did this on order marker 1 and order marker 2 of round 1, and that right there means I've lost. Because you look at the board and I haven't lost any pieces yet, there's still dice to be rolled, and you think, great, I'm in a fine position. And it's tough to understand, like, I just completely screwed up this, and that's going to be game. And sometimes it's not quite as definitive as that, but assuming my opponent is playing well, if I do X and Y wrong at the very start of the game, that can just be the game. If
Hmm.
I misdevelop, if I like, you really have to be strong at that part of the game, the early game, or else you're gonna lose. And again, it's a tough game to know. Like in chess, if you screw up real early and get checkmated, you understand, oh, I got checkmated at this point in the game. That makes sense to me, right? Whereas like in Heroscape, it's like it's all these incremental advantages over the course of the game, to where it's like, well, I screwed this up early, and that ended up causing all these other effects to happen. It meant I didn't have the board control. It meant I didn't get the quantity of attacks. It meant this and that. I lost this order marker. Like, it's the spiraling effect of that, and it's tough. But you have to be able to, you got to trace that to the start. You got to trace that, like, what did I do initially? And it's like, if something happens bad, it's important not to just look at what happened bad at that moment, but why was I in this situation in the first place? And oftentimes you find your mistake a couple turns before, oh no, I just lost Concan here. What was my mistake? Well, my mistake actually came the round earlier when I did this and this wrong. That's something I continue to learn at, because I don't think you will ever stop learning at that aspect in the game, is looking back and being like, man, it wasn't this decision itself. It was the decisions that preceded that decision that caused me to have to make that decision. Like, that's my best move, but the only reason that's my best move is because I screwed up all these other moves.
Right.
It's tough though. You got to come in with a really strong strategic game plan. And I don't mean to plug my podcast again, but one of the things we're going to be covering for sure is the strategy of the game, and like how to come in with better strategy. And it's a nebulous concept to talk about. It's really tough to talk about. I haven't figured out how it's going to work, but if the people listening want somewhere to start, I cannot recommend Jack 6 What's in an Order Marker enough. That is like the definitive piece of Heroscape literature, probably of all time. Like that,
Yeah.
especially before we were doing this, Bigga, before we were doing this type of stuff, and before like Veggie was writing, Doc was writing, like that was pretty much it for Heroscape knowledge on the web.
Hmm.
And so like listeners, I can't recommend checking that out enough.
Yeah. No, that's such a good resource. In fact, I mean, I'll include that in the description. I'll have a link to it, but I think that was such a good first piece of Heroscape strategy that was written out. And I mean, it's crazy how still relevant it is today with how much things have changed. You still see the same strategies and principles. And like, even with, I think that was written during a time when, you know, like the standard tournament format was you're double blind, bring an army, you play that all day. And like even with things changing, formats changing to like you can do it reverse the whip, heat of battle, etc., you still find the same principles are just still totally relevant. Such a good read. And yeah, like I said, definitely we'll have it in the description for you guys to check out.
Yeah, I mean, you look at that's really the foundation of Heroscape strategy knowledge, and the way I view reverse the whip is largely predicated on that article. You know, it's like I have my own, and I'll be sharing this later for sure. I'll probably type up a thread or whatever, but I have my own definitions that are a little more specific than what he uses, but all they are is really like derivative of, they're just kind of derivative of his, where it's like I take it and I expand it a little more, but like I don't know that mine exists without his first, you know. It's like like I super can't take credit for it. His articles early on are just, I mean, and he also then he took over the power rankings from Spider, the original power rankings, and yeah, I mean, he was just a really like good player. He was like, there was the top like 3 or 4 players back in the day, and then he was in that like the next like 10 or something, whereas like he always got close but never managed to like crack that main event win, right? Like
would get bridesmaid category.
In the what?
In the bridesmaid category, where he's always the bridesmaid, never the bride.
Exactly, which is honestly, that's where I've been stuck, but we won't talk about that. If you know what, if I don't keep getting paired up into Doc, I will break through. But Doc, if you're listening, please just don't go to the next GenCon and we'll be all good, okay?
or just have Doc match into Matthias first round of day 2, and
that's true. Matthias has like a 6-1 record against him.
Nice.
It's insane. And like I think Nathan has a crazy record against him too. So yeah, so as long as it's not as long as I'm not facing him, I'm good. So but I don't know, that's about all I got for this. Do you have any other thoughts on this? I mean, I think it's basically just like Cody just needed to implement a bit of a stronger strategy, right? And and he has a chance to come out on top, but it's tough playing down.
Yeah, like 100%. I mean, I think we covered it pretty much, but yeah, just like we said, just looking for that little bit of a stronger strategy, and like we said, good gameplay, good tactics, and adapting as the game went on. But it was not a favorable matchup going in, and I mean, it's just sometimes it's hard to deal with that when you go in knowing that you're, you know, starting behind.
Right.
But yeah, definitely a good game. Definitely enjoyed it, and just like lots to look at and observe during this one. So yeah, definitely enjoyed it. Thank you, OrcElfArmyOne, for joining me for this one. This is a really good one.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was fun, and again, I definitely agree. This was a fun game to watch. It's fun to watch couple good players going at it, especially when it's a different matchup. You know, it's not the same thing I've seen a bunch of times. It's like I haven't seen Nilf, specifically Nilf Cutters. I've never seen that into Knights, and Cutters into Knights I've never seen. So it's like it's cool because I'm learning while we're doing this too. And yeah.
Agreed. I mean, like there's so many just like combinations that you can see. I'm actually really glad that Cleon played a little off meta, even if it didn't quite work out for him in this game. I'm glad he did it so that we could have this cool game to check out and watch. But yeah, so that'll be it from us today, folks. Thank you for checking out the video. Hopefully you enjoyed it as much as we did. You know, as always, if there's any feedback that you have for us, make sure you let me know. I'm always looking for ways to improve. Make sure you check out Online Con, as it is coming up soon. I'm not sure exactly when this one will be posted. It might be a few days, it might be a week before Online Con starts, maybe, we'll see. But it'll be a good time. Definitely look into playing it in it if you're not certain about it. I mean, it's a great way to play. Even if you're a newer player, it's a great way to play and learn. I mean, playing against the top players that will be in online convention, it'll be a great way to learn about it. And I'll definitely be there getting as many videos as I can to record. And also, I mean, I think, didn't you say you guys are going to be casting videos live during the tournament?
We'll definitely be doing some of that. I have no idea. So I run the podcast, but Matthew, also known as ISB3 on the forums, actually runs the Twitch channel, and so it's kind of dependent on him. And so
okay,
people people don't know this about them, but like the Ashes are not the most put together always, and not always the most on top of things. So like we were struggling to get the last thing we casted up the like live because Matthew slept in really late.
Oh,
So
okay.
and they actually managed to, the four of them, one of the first years we were there, I don't know, it was like 2013 or 2014, they managed to sleep in and miss the team tournament on the Sunday of Gen Con. So it's like you never really know. So we will be streaming some with, we'll be commentating, and it should be a good time, and we'll be, talking about the games and such. But we don't have any schedule for you guys, and quite frankly, we probably won't have a schedule for you guys. So I'm sorry. It's not like Biga does a great job of every Wednesday he's releasing a new video. It's amazing. And I don't know how he does it, because for me, it's like every couple months I release something. So, but yeah, I mean, just stay tuned. Just be checking Heroscapers, people, and you'll see us post in the casters thread when we go live, and we'll probably post in the online con thread when we go live, just the first time of the day, not every time. We won't post about every game, obviously, but so just keep your eyes out, and theoretically we'll be casting some.
There you go. Yeah, I'll have links to the online thread in the description, so you can always that'll be your resource if you want to check there, and you can keep an eye on that to see when they go live, because that'll be awesome to check out. In fact, I'll probably even just include a direct link to the Twitch channel for that. And if you're lucky, you might click on it and find out that they're casting a game. I don't know.
That's pretty much how it's going to work.
If that happens, let me know, because I want to know if have that commentating power over the future of the viewers as well as the game sometimes.
Yeah, we'll try to coordinate so that we're not like doing the same games or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
So I'll try to be the middleman between you and Matthew and try to figure this all out. But honestly, Biga, record what you want, and we'll be doing who knows. So we'll figure it out.
Yeah, it'll all work out. I mean, like if we've got the same game, that's fine. If we've got different games, we'll try to do different games, and that's just more and more Heroscape content for you viewers to enjoy for yourself. I'm really looking forward to it. I'm definitely gonna be checking out those casting streams. Even if I can't catch it live, I'll be checking them out afterwards, because I'm really looking forward to see what commentary you guys bring to it. It'll be a good time. It'll be a great weekend. Really looking forward to it. But
yeah, and I also, I definitely recommend playing, or if you don't want to play, at least I would watch these games. Like I'm gonna be watching these games even if we aren't commentating. I'll be definitely checking out what's happening, and especially in the top four, and the finals of stuff, and just check it out. It's good to watch it, good to see what's happening. And I mean, it can be a little tough to watch online games for sure, just based on it's harder to visualize the maps, in my opinion. And I think Biga does a great job of this, is helping people see the maps and through the commentary. So we'll be trying to do that. It should be a great weekend.
Yeah, agreed. It'll be a great time. Looking forward to it. So that'll be it from us today. Thanks everybody for checking it out. Again, looking forward to seeing hopefully you all either playing or watching on the weekend of online convention. And yeah, remember what a glorious world we all live in. And 10 points under and out.